price. We're looking at oil price in the 40s, maybe lower 50s. We're not looking at oil prices going up to $100. So the plan is not based on high oil prices.
Right.
If we get high oil prices, that may be a boost, but we're not depending on it at all. However, we want to maximize oil production.
Right.
Oil is a wasting asset, and also alternatives, are coming up to oil. So this is the time to use our oil. This is the time to get value for the oil, because there may come a time when oil is no longer valuable. So what we want to do...
Well, that time is right around the corner, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is why we're engaging with the communities of the Niger Delta.
Right.
We're engaging with the states and saying, please let us have some peace.
Right.
Let us use the oil now.
Right.
Because there's a time limit. Because there's renewable energy is coming up. Alternatives to oil are coming up. So that is basically what we're doing. So this plan is not dependent on having a high oil price.
Right. And
we have not projected a high oil price. We've not projected a price higher than the range I'm talking about, the 40s and the 50s.
Right. Okay. Now, a key component of that plan is the sale of portions of the country's oil assets. There's also talk about being an exporter of petroleum products. I mean, how you can talk about that when you haven't got any functioning refineries is quite an astonishing projection there. But let's talk about the oil assets, because the sale of them are supposed to help fund the recovery program by unlocking needed resources. The government plans to reduce its stake in joint venture oil assets and other holdings. Will selling them optimize their efficiency and reduce the fiscal burden on the government?
Thank you very much for that question. There is actually a cabinet committee headed by His Excellency, the acting president, was set up by the president and headed by, at that time, the vice president, but now the acting president, that is looking at this issue. And it is yet to report. It's looking at it because there is most of the revenue we get from oil is actually from taxes and royalties, not from the dividend portion of it. And so even if we sell down, what we'll be giving up will not be that significant. And secondly, we are looking ultimately at incorporating the joint ventures. So, and when you want to incorporate the joint ventures, to make them more attractive for investors, it might be necessary for government to come down in terms of its share. So those are the things that we're looking at. But the Cabinet Committee is working on it, and when it is through, we'll be able to report fully as regards that initiative. But it's an initiative that we're taking very seriously.
Okay, Minister, stay with us. There's a lot more still to come. Now, you're watching an Arise News special from Abuja, Nigeria, where the government has just released its much-anticipated economic and growth and recovery plan. And of all the key outcomes this blueprint is aiming to deliver on, the one that will probably be most keenly watched is electric power. Just over 3 years ago, the Nigerian government in office at the time concluded the biggest privatization transaction in African history and arguably the largest sale of electricity assets in the world. It was said to be the big thing that would finally guarantee efficient power supply and in real terms transform the Nigerian economy. Nigerians were told that there would be immediate massive increases in capacity that would continue year on year, culminating in around 20,000 megawatt capacity by 2020, with the private sector who'd bought all those electricity assets putting in the bulk of the annual $4 billion investment required to achieve that target. But with 2020 just 3 years away, the plan to overhaul, upgrade and reform Nigeria's horrendously complicated electricity system lies in tatters. The biggest privatization transaction in African history has turned out to be yet another broken promise that's taken its place amongst the notable history of failures and delays in the power sector, leaving Nigeria teetering on the brink of an energy disaster. So will this new plan turn things around? With me, the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Udoma. And let me make it clear that your government is not responsible for the problems of electricity in this country, but we're looking at solutions. Tell us what those solutions are.
Well, you know, we've come in to fix problems, and that is one problem we're determined to fix. The first, of course, is to address the issues of power generation, the feedstock. We've had shortages in gas because of sabotage and all that. So part of what the Vice President's mission to the Niger Delta is to address those issues, to get gas supply back. That has been a major constraint, so we're working on that. Then it is important that the whole system itself, that there's liquidity in the system, that every part of the system, the GENCOs, the DISCOs, the transmission, every aspect is profitable. So we're working on that. We're putting government support behind it. We're strengthening the transmission. We're putting more resources in transmission. And government is still involved, even in generation. We, in the 2017 budget, there's a provision for some funding for the Mambilla, hydroelectric. So we're also looking, so we're not abandoning it because the private sector has it. We're engaging with, working with the private sector and putting government resources behind it.
The problem is that Nigerians are going to say, Minister, with all due respect, that we've heard it all before. There was the National Integrated Power Project in, 2005 to 2007. There was the last government with their massive privatization roadmap to electricity. It's all happened before. The problem with electricity is that it's not like a road where you can build half a road and then people can use that half whilst you're building the other half. Every single element has to be in place. So you build the generating capacity, you put your transmission system in there, you get your distribution networks, everything's got to be in place. And then you've got to supply gas to those generating sort of plants. What I don't understand is who plans these things? I mean, how can you not take into account the fact that power generating stations require gas to operate?
I think we have a very good minister in charge of power works and housing. He's rolled out his plans. And apart from the issues that I have raised, we also want to diversify our sources of power.
Right.
So we're looking at solar. And right now, we're looking at some solar projects that are going to come on stream. We're looking at wind as well. And we're looking at using coal. So we're not going to rely just on gas.
Right.
We're going to look at diversifying our sources.
But you're saying you're going to look at
this
has to be achieved within a 3-year period.
No, we're doing it already in the budget. There is a provision for a wind in Katsina. There is already, we're working on the solar right now. So it's not as if it's not a futuristic thing. These are things that we're working on as I speak.
Right, okay. Now, Minister, we will have to watch and see, because there's not much anybody can say beyond what you've just said. I mean, we can't hold you to ransom. We have to essentially wait and see whether or not this comes to fruition. But let's move on to other aspects of this economic recovery plan. And of course, another one that clearly concerns a lot of people is the question of unemployment. A big section of this new economic recovery and growth blueprint is taken up by plans to create millions of jobs. The Buhari government came to power in 2015 on a pledge to find work for millions of graduates and unemployed youths. Millions of them are still waiting. Unemployment is a huge problem in Nigeria. Many young people, frustrated by the lack of work, are heading to Europe as illegal immigrants. and are also a huge factor in the growing pockets of unrest across the country. The latest figures show a worrying pattern of deepening unemployment, rising from 9.9% in 2015 to a staggering 19.7% in 2016. As our sister publication, Thisday newspaper, put it, bad enough that such a high percentage of Nigeria's labor force is idle, but worse and extremely dangerous is the fact that more than 50% of them are between the ages of 15 and 35. That's a total youth labor force of 38.2 million, representing a youth unemployment rate of 42.24%. And as the recession deepens and Nigeria lurches towards a possible depression, as some suggest, no evidence at all that the unemployment situation will improve. Up till now, there's been no clear government plan for tackling the situation. So will this new economic recovery policy document be the turning point? With me in the studio, the Nigerian Minister for Budget and Planning, Senator Udoma Udoma. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. Tell us about your plans to deal with unemployment.
Thank you very much. We intend to create 15 million new jobs in the next 4 years. And we're doing them in various areas, and we're particularly looking at the youth. So we're looking at construction. We're going on a massive construction of roads,
Right.
of bridges, of railway. That will create jobs. Construction of houses. We're setting up a fund, social housing fund of 1 trillion naira, of which the government's stake, the government participation is going to be 100 billion naira. That's going to create a lot of new houses, and those create jobs. Then agriculture. We're putting a lot of investment in agriculture, rural roads, fertilizer, and so on. That will create jobs. Then we intend and then manufacturing. Manufacturing, we're setting up special economic zones in different parts of the country.
Right.
These zones will have uninterruptible power, they'll have water, they'll have security, and those will create a lot of new jobs. So most of the new jobs will be created in the private sector, by the private sector.
Right.
Most of the new jobs will be in the private sector. However, government has an obligation to make sure that the most vulnerable people are still looked after. And so government will also be involved in various social intervention programs to create jobs. So in total, as I said, we intend to create at least 15 million new jobs, most of them targeted at the youth. We want to convert, because having a large population of young people, it can actually be a strength for the country. We're looking at ICT. We're looking at creating ICT hubs.
Right.
There is a program called the Smart program, which is being conducted by the Ministry of Investments as well as Ministry of Communications, working together to create technology hubs in different parts of the country to train software engineers and computer engineers and all that, and to create new industries on the back of technology. And you know, the young people, this is an area that young people will be drawn to. So those are the various programs that we're doing to create jobs.
Okay, again, this is something that we can't dispute. We have to watch and see what happens in the years to come. Very quickly, one of the things that has concerned observers of this document is that in spite of the high level of corruption in Nigeria and its debilitating impact on the country, there's no mention of it in this document.
Governance is mentioned, and governance, one of the most important things in governance is reducing corruption. Ease of doing business also involves, one of the things to look at is corruption. So corruption is important. As you'll recall, that this is an administration that came and campaigned on the basis of 3 things. 1 was anti-corruption. 2 was security. 3 was the economy. This document deals more with the economy. but we have set out our plans for corruption, and this document talks about it.
Right.
It is mentioned, it is stated. Our pledge to fighting corruption is in this document.
Now, Minister, in conclusion, you've packed a lot into this 3-year plan. You've talked about improving foreign exchange flows, achieving an additional 10 gigawatts of power generation, which is about 10,000 megawatts, becoming an exporter of refined petroleum products, creating a stable macroeconomic environment, infrastructural development, and an industrialized economy. Just words, of course, the key